What's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Diadora Blushield Torneo 3, and do not let the outer looks fool you. Do not judge this book by its cover. Even though it looks like the Torneo 2, the upgrades are ridiculous. Let's get into them. And thanks to Diadora for getting me a pair of these to check out. However, this video is not sponsored, and as always, all opinions, good, bad, and indifferent, are all my own. Now, like I said, just the surprises of this shoe just kept coming as I put them on and then as I tore them down, as I did tests on them. Crazy. Now, starting off in the uppers, I guess I'll start with the one thing that's the biggest con about the Torneo 3, and that is the drag guard. The drag guard in of itself is great. It's 3 layers thick, but it did take a while to break in. So I think even after 45 minutes, an hour, I could still feel some bending and snapping. And even about a week later, you could still feel it here and there. Like if you put your foot in different positions, it broke in a lot. And it wasn't uncomfortable after break-in, but you could just still feel it here and there. So that was really the only bad part. And so from there, really, it just keeps getting better and better. Now, as you go up the lace line, you do get integrated lace eyelets, but that's not the best part of the lace line. As you can see, you do get a runner's knot, which is actually a little bit wider set, those lace eyelets. But when you tie them down, these tabs are just a little bit longer. So when you do a runner's knot in these things, you get no lace irritation. So you can crank down on them, get a ton of lockdown, and not really have the irritation that goes along with it. I found that if I use the runner's knot, whether the stock insole or an orthotic, I had pretty much mild to no heel slippage. Now, if you don't use the runner's knot and just use the peak lace eyelet, then it's mild to moderate heel slippage. To be honest, no matter how you crank it down, the shoe is meant to use that runner's knot. And when you do, it was really good. Even if I just used the back lace eyelet, I actually had more lace irritation than I did using the runner's knot. Going into the heel counter, you do get a ton of bulky padding right in the posterior aspect of the ankle collar going up the heel counter. The padding gets a little bit thinner around the ankle collar on the medial and lateral side, but like I said, lockdown is still fantastic. You go into the shoe though, and you know, it's not the thickest padding, but that mesh padding is enough to where it feels really nice and buttered. Like I said, the only spot you really feel anything is on the medial side of that drag guard is. Like this thing on the breathability test, I thought this was pretty cool. They did heat up 111.6 degrees, which in and of itself is just, you know, middle of the road. It's not super elite, it's not super terrible either, but when you look at what all you get in the uppers, especially with the Diadora logo going around it for some really thick foxing on the lateral side. It then integrates into the lace line and then around the drag guard, you do get an external heel counter as well as an internal heel counter, so it's super stable. And then you look at the breathability mapping of them and fog is blowing at it everywhere. So for a shoe as rugged as it is, I actually thought that was a pretty good compromise in terms of breathability, number one. Like I said, handles moisture really well, and heat dissipation, especially because peak external temperature did get to 154 degrees in the forefoot. So there is, you know, heat and moisture egress. It's just there's so much material in some parts of the shoe that can still hold on to it. But like I said, I think the trade-off is fantastic. Look at this thing though, on the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. I guess I should say this is a little bit of a con. For as thick as the drag guard is, the bird does get through a little bit of it. It doesn't get all the way through it. And like I said, it is pretty darn thick. You do have exposed foam there, and that foam, you'll see in the midsole why it might start to look a little bit weird. You don't have a ton of rubber that comes up over there. So I would say draggers and sliders, it might start to look a little bit weird, but the durability as a whole should still be there. All right, but getting into the midsole teardown and what is basically my wildest Christmas wish list to Santa, this was awesome. Now, number one, at first I thought I was getting a false sense because you look at their movable insole and it's dual density, it's got a little more padding in the heel. I'm thinking, is it so comfortable because of the insole? Nope. Took the insole out and just put my foot straight on the strobo board, and it was just as comfortable. Now, as you go into the forefoot, you do get Blushield again, except this Blushield feels a little bit more light and airy. Remember, Blushield is just this gel polymer insert, whether it's polyurethane gel. It looks like open cell polyurethane on the microscope. It also could be TPE. I'm not sure, but this gel polymer insert, but it's got these plugs, and these plugs are allowed to move around, and that's what gives you so much shock absorption, as well as the fact that it's that polymer gel that just the properties of it aren't really shock absorbing, but because it's those plugs, those circular plugs, they can just kind of move around really anywhere your foot is going, so it always feels comfortable. But This formulation of Blushield just seemed a little bit more light and airy. Looking at it on the microscope, just looks a little bit more light and airy, just a little bit more refined. As you go into the rest of the shoe, just Diadora's standard, EVA carrier foam is so much more plush, more elastic feeling versus previous models. Whereas in previous Diadoras, yeah, I mean, the EVA is, is fine. There's really nothing super to write home about. It's comfortable. This was like, I put my foot down on it and I noticed it right away, how plush and comfortable it was. But that's not the best part of it. Yeah, you get all this plush, really nice foam in there, but that means nothing unless something's containing it. If you go into the shank, it's a double thickness shank on the bottom of the shoe, it's plastic, but then on the outside, and I cut it open to make sure, this is a separate shank. There's a gap in between there. So this thing's got two shanks. Number one, bottom loaded on the shoe, and then it's got an external scaffolding on the medial side as well as on the lateral side. And it's scooped out on the medial side and it juts out medially to create a medial flange on the heel for more push off. You'll see where that comes into play in the speed ratio, but for a shoe with this much comfort underfoot, to have this much like rugged performance and this much side to side stopping power and push off power, I just think is absolutely just out of this world. Look at the bounce height test, got 33 centimeters in the rear foot, 28 in the forefoot. Really no surprise, Blushield is meant more for shock absorption than anything. But like I said, the foam really to me is there for comfort, protection. It's the shank, or I should say the two shanks that are giving you all that performance. And yeah, I'm counting the medial and lateral shanks as just one external truss then on the bottom when you see it on the speed ratio and the shank score. All right, but getting into the outsole tread, this is really something that hasn't changed much from previous models. Basically a really chunky, flat herringbone on the medial side, then it gets a little bit more thin and chunky on the lateral side. This is thick, chunky rubber though. You look at this thing on the grip test ramp, slips at 36 degrees, pretty typical. If you wanna stop in these things, you can. You wanna slide, you can too. Most tennis shoes nowadays that have good rubber really are hitting that sweet spot. You look at this thing though on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, and yeah, like almost a millimeter of damage on this. And the durometer comes in at 20.8. The thing is the rubber is so thick, it's so chunky, and in the forefoot and in the lateral rear foot, it's really wide, so there's gonna be a lot of load sharing. So these should last just as well as previous Diadoras. You also get this ridiculous lateral flange made of outsole rubber, this clip flange that has all that herringbone coming up over it too, so stopping power in these things is absolutely fantastic. And listing on the speed ratio, I don't think any speed ratio ever done has encapsulated a shoe better than on this one. Just on its own, it comes in at a 1.94, shank score of 0.4. There's two shanks and they're both double thickness, brings it up to a 2.34. And that's where I think they really are. And the nice thing is even the speed ratio kind of shows that the shank is what's doing it. The push-off power, especially side to side, the stopping power, how stable they are. We'll see in the fit section too, what I'm talking about with stability. No, I mean the foams, yeah, to me they're more shock absorbing, right? They're more protective, but the external systems in the shoe are what's really bringing it up to the level of a more speedy shoe. We know they're not the lightest, most nimble shoes on the planet, but in terms of rugged side to side speed and power, yeah, they are one of the best ones on the planet for that, for sure. All right, but getting into the fit of the threes, these things have a resting position of 3 degrees everted, but then loaded, they don't change. Still 3 degrees everted, which I guess I should have known because it's got the medial flange on the heel made of plastic. So really they shouldn't give all that much. So they basically start a little bit everted, a little more ankle sprain protection, but you're not getting any more strain on these things. Like I said, that push off power is pretty stout. Now these do have a 12-degree inflare, 28.8 centimeter length, 9.5 centimeter metatarsal width, 10.5 centimeter toe box width, and a toe box taper of 28 degrees. So, I mean, I would say pretty much whatever you've worn on the twos, you can wear on the threes. I'd say a narrow medium foot, you still go true to size on these things because they lock down really well with the runner's knot. I would be putting that runner's knot in these things. A 2E I think can go true to size and break these in. I did, I had no problems. A 4E probably went up 1/2 size. If you're somebody specifically with a bunion though, you might want to go up that 1/2 size just to get a little bit more room on that drag guard. And if you are staying true to size and you have a bunion, make sure you throw some tennis balls in there just to break it in. I mean, the threes are pretty just standard, medium to generous medium shoe. In terms of people I'd be recommending these for, I mean, to me, the Torneos have always been and still are one of the best, if not the best shoe for forefoot pain. I mean, yeah, it's the best shoe out there for forefoot pain. But now, in terms of heel pain, I think it really comes up to the level of that, because number one, you're getting so much stability from the shanks. The foam setup is just so forgiving, but it's not a squishmallow, right? It's not gonna make you stabilize the shoe, because a lot of shoes with really soft foam, it doesn't have anything to stabilize it. The tendons, the muscles in your leg are firing constantly to keep you stable, and these ones, they don't have to do that, while you still get all the benefits, more of that comfortable foam. These are mainly, to me, these are an aggressive baseline shoe. These are an all-court shoe. People that are just really putting a lot of energy into their footwork need a shoe that is gonna be really stable. People that kind of get into some awkward positions off court, need a lot of push-off power, going coast to coast on the court, and want a lot of stopping power in their shoe. So if you are somebody with aggressive movement, maybe somebody with some snake bites in your foot that is a pretty aggressive mover, then I think, like I said, this is, I think, as good as it gets, to be honest. I can't get over how much I like these versus the 2s. Like I said, it looks like the same shoe. And it was funny because I had my dad in these too, and we started hitting. He was wearing his pair of Babolat Jet Mach 3s, and he came and got these. And when he switched them out, he said, the Jet Mach 3s are a little bit speedier feeling. Then he said, these feel like the very best parts of a bedroom slipper put into a performance tennis shoe. And I hadn't played in them yet. I let him go in them first. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, they don't look all that different. And then you put them on and you're like, oh yeah, like that's exactly what they are. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. The fanboy status for me on the Torneo is alive and well. This is gonna be like the toughest year ever to do a top 5 list, because there's been so many good shoes that have come out. And now these have come out, and I'm just, yeah, it's gonna be a fun top 5 this year. So if you do wanna check out another shoe that has just gone under the knife, that has had some, actually, pretty significant changes from its previous model, the Mizuno Wave & Force Tour 2, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. See you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.